"Excuse me, sir, I can clean your shoes. Just $10, that's all I need." The words were barely louder than a whisper, but they sliced through the air like a plea from a soul bruised by fate. The boy's hands, trembling and coated in city dust, clutched a worn-out shoe brush, its bristles frayed from overuse, its handle cracked like his childhood. His eyes, wide and hollow, looked up with a glint of desperate hope. "You've seen many children before, but there was something different about this one. This is not just another story of poverty. This is a story of survival, resilience, and a kind of bravery that exists only in those who have nothing left to lose. So don't look away. He's waiting for you to hear him. This is his story, and you won't forget it." In the bustling heart of a city that never really sleeps, where car horns screech louder than people's conscience and everyone walks a little too fast to notice anyone else, a boy no older than 10 stood on the corner of a crumbling sidewalk near a grand office building. The pavement beneath his bare feet was cracked and uneven, each stone as broken as the nights he'd spent sleeping on them. His clothes were patched beyond recognition, an oversized shirt hanging off one shoulder, sleeves rolled up unevenly, and trousers tied with a makeshift belt of old rope. He didn't ask for much. Never had. All he wanted was $10. Just 10. It wasn't to buy candy or toys or any of the things boys his age often dreamt of. His dream was far more modest, and somehow, far more heartbreaking. His name was Faizan, and what he wanted, more than anything, was to take that $10 home to his mother, who lay sick under a plastic tarp and a broken roof in the city's most neglected slum. Each morning, before the city fully awoke, Faizan would walk 2 miles barefoot with his little brush in hand. He wasn't begging, not in his eyes. He was offering a service. He was willing to work. But people rarely saw him as more than a nuisance. Men in suits glanced down at him, waved him away as if brushing off a fly. Women clutched their purses tighter. Security guards threatened to chase him off. Yet, every day, he returned, standing tall on his tiny feet, whispering the same line over and over, "Just $10, I'll shine your shoes, please." On a particularly scorching morning, Faizan stood across the street from the towering glass offices of a wealthy conglomerate. He'd noticed one man in particular, Mr. Harris, who always stepped out for coffee at 10 o'clock sharp. Harris was a man of routine. Polished shoes, pressed suit, gold cufflinks. His face was clean-shaven and hard, like a man too busy for emotions. Faizan had watched him for 3 days now. Something about Mr. Harris seemed different. Maybe it was how he didn't throw garbage in the street. Maybe it was the way he once gave an old woman directions instead of ignoring her. So today, Faizan gathered every ounce of courage and waited for the moment. As Mr. Harris stepped out, Faizan ran across, narrowly dodging a motorbike, and stood directly in his path. "Sir, please. I'll shine your shoes. Just $10. My mom is sick, and I haven't eaten since yesterday. Please." His words came fast, like a dam breaking. Harris stopped, looked down. For a second, time slowed. The city noises dulled. People passed by, annoyed, some murmuring, "Move along, boy," under their breath. Harris looked at the child, at the brush, at the tiny hands gripping it, at the dry lips and sunburnt skin. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Faizan blinked. Nobody had asked his name in weeks. "Faizan, sir." Harris paused, then slowly bent down. "All right, Faizan, let's see what you got." With trembling hands, Faizan dropped to his knees, pulling a small bottle of polish from his pocket. It was nearly empty. His fingers moved with the careful grace of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. His eyes never lifted, but his heart beat faster with every stroke of the brush. $10. $10 meant rice for 3 days. $10 meant medicine. $10 meant hope. As he worked, Harris crouched beside him, ignoring the gawking crowd. "Where's your father?" he asked. Faizan hesitated. He went out one day and never came back. "And your mother? She has fever. She can't stand. I try to get her bread, and sometimes water when I can. But it's hard." Harris felt something twist inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Pity. Or maybe guilt. Or perhaps just humanity. When Faizan finished, he looked up. "I tried my best, sir." Harris examined the shoes. They weren't perfect. But they were gleaming, shining not from the polish, but from the boy's raw effort. Harris reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. Faizan's eyes widened in disbelief. But sir, I only asked for 10. And I gave you 10. 10 times over. Because you earned it. Tears welled up in Faizan's eyes as he took the bill with shaking hands. Thank you, sir. Thank you, I swear, I'll use it for my mother. Harris nodded, placing a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. Go home, Faizan. And come back tomorrow. I'll bring some more shoes. As Faizan ran down the street, clutching the money as if it were treasure, his feet barely touched the ground. For once, the pavement didn't feel so cruel. For once, he felt seen, not as a beggar, not as a burden, but as a boy who mattered. And back in his tiny home, under a torn roof and rusted walls, his mother watched him return with light in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. That night, Faizan slept with a full stomach, a warm blanket, and a heart filled with something rare, hope. If this story moved you even a little, if Faizan's courage, his tiny hands gripping that brush, reminded you of the quiet warriors who fight every day just to survive, then please don't leave without sharing this video. Hit the like button to support voices like his, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that the world needs to hear. Faizan's journey doesn't end here. The next morning arrived with the scent of damp air and dusty roads, the sky still heavy with gray clouds that refused to pour. Faizan awoke before the sun did, just as he always had, but something was different now, not the hole in the ceiling that still dripped when it rained, not the torn mat he slept on, not even the sharp twist of hunger in his belly, but the strange, warm memory of yesterday. Of being seen, of being heard, of being helped. The $100 note was still safely folded in a small, tin box beneath his mother's thin bedding. It had brought not just food the night before, but medicine, clean water, and something far more valuable, her smile. For the first time in weeks, she had smiled at him. That fragile smile that mothers give when they're trying to be strong for their children, even as their bodies betray them. Faizan had held her hand all night, whispering dreams into the silence, of fixing the roof, buying a blanket that didn't smell like mildew, maybe even saving enough to go to school one day. But dreams, he had learned, were like soap bubbles, beautiful and fragile, easily popped by the sharp stones of reality. Still, that morning, he picked up his shoe brush with a new kind of pride, carefully wrapping the bristles in cloth as if tucking in a sleeping child. He walked the same 2 miles barefoot, past the same piles of rotting trash, same graffiti-stained walls, and the same alley where older boys sometimes smoked and laughed too loud. But this time, he walked straighter. This time, he had purpose. He was going to meet Mr. Harris again, and, maybe, just maybe, he'd clean more shoes, earn more money, and take another step away from the world that tried so hard to swallow him whole. But fate is a cruel author. Just as Faizan reached the familiar building, a large black car swerved abruptly at the corner. The screech of tires startled him. A moment later, 2 well-dressed men stepped out in haste, whispering quickly into walkie-talkies. Sirens wailed in the distance. Something was wrong. The security guard at the entrance looked panicked, and within minutes, a small crowd gathered. Faizan clutched his brush tighter and approached the building. What happened? He asked. Nobody answered. He stepped closer and spotted one of the janitors, an old man who often nodded at him with kindness. Uncle, Faizan asked, where is Mr. Harris? The old man's expression changed. He hesitated, then spoke softly, Beta, he's gone. Mr. Harris had a heart attack in the elevator this morning. They rushed him to the hospital, but, they say he didn't make it. Faizan blinked. For a second, everything stopped. He couldn't understand. Gone. What did that mean? Mr. Harris, the man who had changed everything just yesterday, couldn't be gone. Not like this. Not after giving him hope. Not after seeing him. His small hands trembled. He walked to the steps where he had polished Harris' shoes, and sat down. His brush lay on his lap like a weight. Around him, the city continued, cars honked, phones rang, people shouted, but inside him, something had fallen eerily silent. No one else cared. To the world, Harris was just another name on a corporate floor. But to Faizan, he was the first man who had seen him as a boy, not a burden. For days, Faizan returned to the same spot, hoping, childishly, foolishly, that maybe the news had been wrong. That maybe Harris would walk out again, coffee in hand, smile faintly and say, let's clean some shoes, Faizan. But the man never came. And as time passed, people forgot. Even the guards stopped talking about it. The office resumed its noise, its rush, its indifference. Faizan continued to work, shining shoes for strangers who rarely paid him more than a few coins, if they paid at all. The $100 bill had run out quickly, medicine was expensive, and his mother's health was fading faster than he could earn. Some nights, he'd sit beside her, holding her thin, cold fingers, whispering about how one day they'd leave this city, go to a place where no one was ever hungry, and the only sirens were those of laughter. She would smile, tiredly, and brush his hair back. "My brave boy," she'd whisper. "You were always my little warrior. But warriors need shields." And Faizan had none. The world grew harsher. The rainy season hit, and the roof finally collapsed. He and his mother moved into an even smaller space under a plastic sheet behind a rusting train yard. The smell of diesel and garbage never left the air. He kept working, kept brushing shoes with the same care, hoping someone, anyone, might notice him again. But Harris had been 1 in a million. And 1 in a million doesn't come twice. One afternoon, after a long, hard day of rejection and empty stomachs, Faizan sat alone behind the building where he once met Harris. The brush lay beside him, useless. His stomach ached. His heart ached more. He began to cry, not loudly, not theatrically, but the silent, exhausted sobs of a boy who had run out of bravery. A young woman walked past. She looked like a journalist, camera slung over her shoulder, a notebook in hand. She paused when she saw him. "Are you okay?" she asked. Faizan quickly wiped his face. "Yes, no, I don't know." She knelt beside him. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Faizan. Do you live around here?" "Kind of. Behind the train yard." She frowned. "Where are your parents?" "My mother's sick. My father, left a long time ago." She studied him, then gently picked up the shoe brush. "Do you use this?" He nodded. "I clean shoes. For $10. The words felt like a whisper from another life. "And do people pay you?" "Sometimes. One man did. A kind man. He died." There was something about the way Faizan said it that stayed with her. She sat beside him, asked questions, listened, truly listened, as he spoke. About his mother, his dreams, the roof that leaked, the shoes, Mr. Harris, the $10. She was quiet for a long time, then asked, "Can I tell your story?" Faizan blinked. "Why?" "Because people forget children like you exist. And maybe they shouldn't." She took a photo of him, sitting there on the step, holding that brush, eyes too old for his age. Then she left. A week later, a video appeared online. All he wanted was $10, the child with the shoe brush and the man who listened. It was a quiet, emotional video, soft music, real tears, real struggle. The internet noticed. For once, the world paused. Thousands watched. Thousands shared. People from around the world commented, "I cried watching this. We need more people like Mr. Harris. How do we help this boy?" Donations began to pour in. Not millions, but enough. Enough to get Faizan and his mother into a real room with a roof and clean water. Enough to buy food that didn't rot overnight. Enough to see a real doctor. Enough to sleep without fear. Enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change. The journalist returned, this time with news. A school was offering him a scholarship. A local business wanted to hire his mother as a helper once she recovered. The kindness of one man had opened the eyes of many. And Faizan, he still kept the shoe brush. Not to use, but as a reminder, that even in the hardest moments, even in the ugliest streets, kindness can live. That sometimes, all it takes is one person to look down, not with pity, but with humanity, and say, "What's your name?" As Faizan stood outside his new school weeks later, dressed in a clean uniform, bag on his back, shoes polished and shining like hope itself, he looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll never forget you." He walked through the gates like a boy reborn, not from luxury, not from riches, but from the smallest kindness that grew into a storm of change. And if Faizan could talk to you now, if he could speak through this screen, he'd say, "Don't just scroll past kids like me. We're not invisible. We're just unheard." So if this story touched your heart, if Faizan's tears, his brush, his bravery meant something, then don't let this be the end. Click like, because it tells the world his life mattered. Subscribe, because every child like Faizan has a story that deserves to be told. And share this video, so that kindness doesn't end with one man in a suit. Let it live on, in you.